Al-Shabaab were an enemy who at the time deserved a degree of respect. They were well organised, well disciplined, a group that derived a lot of their tactics and a lot of the way they worked from other military environments such as Afghanistan, Pakistan.
The Al-Shabaab, I would say, is a difficult enemy because, you know, you're fighting an ideology. You are fighting something which is deep in the heart of a human being. And what makes it even harder, this is a guy who feels that when he dies fighting, it's honorable to him.
The strength of Shabab in Mogadishu that time, we estimated them between 4,000 to 5,000. But remember, these were the majority of them fighting on their own ground. But here you are, you have a force, Ugandan and Burundian force that time, that were completely new to that kind of environment.
It was required that we have a force of 12,000 in Mogadishu to take over Mogadishu. But we didn't have that 12,000. If I had the 12,000, I could have conducted such operations. Go through Mogadishu one day, hit it harder, and then consolidate. But I didn't have the force levels. The force numbers were really too low. That's why I decided now to think of phase line operations.
The Al-Shabaab strength relies on hiding in those built-up areas. And we started taking building by building, building by building. Every building was an operation of its own. We used to call it creeping operation.
We said now that mobility does not help us, the best thing would be now to creep from street to street through buildings and then push them back. Because we realized that if we didn't change it, Al-Shabaab would dominate all the surrounding places if we continue to restrict ourselves with our armored vehicles along the road.
AMISOM are faced with a heavy resistance as they try to establish a foothold in a city dominated by Al-Shabaab.
There were times when it really was incredibly dangerous house-to-house fighting. I remember points where you could see Al-Shabaab positions no more than 50 or 60 yards away. It was incredibly close-quarter fighting.
AMISOM and the TFG forces begin to make gains across Mogadishu and target key enemy locations.
My first operations in May was to move and capture Bakara Market. I knew what was going in Bakara. Bakara Market was the financial center of gravity of Al-Shabaab. That's where Al-Shabaab was getting much of its resources to fund the war. I didn't attack Bakara frontal. I first captured the stadium. The stadium was important because it was the headquarters where Al-Shabaab was launching the operation from.
How does it feel for you to be standing here? This place that up until less than 24 hours ago would have been suicide for you.
It's an amazing feeling. I can't describe the feeling that we all feel as Somalis. I myself used to come to this stadium as a young man to watch soccer games. To this place up until 48 hours ago was under the Al-Shabaab control, and as you can see today, it is under our Somali troops and AMISOM troops under our control.
How worried are you about controlling the rest of the city, though, under these circumstances? Because it's much harder to control the city than just at the front line.
Well, we are definitely worried, but the key is we're confident that we are going to have the city under control. We've already put some plans together.
With the stadium under AMISOM control, the force moves towards Mogadishu's commercial center.
Bakara was being a commercial center and highly densely populated. I was avoiding collateral damage and also destruction of the properties of the people. And that could make us have good civil-military relations with the population. And I had also talked to the business community to tell Al-Shabaab to leave Bakara. If they don't, then we come in. But when we surrounded Bakara, they had no option. It took us about some 3-4 days to capture a distance of about 400 meters. Every house, every room, you fight in a room, you find is in another trench. He has dug a hole in a house, and from that house, another house.
AMISOM and the TFG forces eventually take control of Bakara Market in a closely coordinated operation.
They had literally woven the Somali forces, the Somali army, into the AMISOM front line, to the degree to which if you went to the front line, you would see Somali soldier, Ugandan soldier, Somali soldier, Ugandan soldier, shoulder to shoulder along the line.
AMISOM and the TFG forces push into new areas of Mogadishu, including the important district of Bundire, which surrounds the State House.
You could not sit in that State House in Mogadishu. You can't. You can't even walk in the compound because you'll be shot at. So every time people are in the bunkers, they're down, including the president. The president came and asked me, take me away from here. And it was so touching when the president came to me and said, Paul, take me away from here. Around June, I think, we took over Bondere district. The whole of Bondere district was taken. And that relieved us. Also brought security to State House when we took Bondere. It was a bit strategic. It was a high ground. We got some tall buildings, took advantage of that.
Here, when you have not controlled the corridors and the tall buildings, that's where the problem is. But once you have already controlled the corridors, you have already constructed the escort barriers, and you have entered the tall buildings, then you take the day. Nobody can remove you from there.
What we need now is not to overstress ourselves in this tall thicket. We need now to either all of us combine a force and we go to Industrial Road.
As the operation progresses, Al-Shabaab alters its tactics to a more guerrilla-style warfare. Roadside bombs and IEDs become a major threat to AMISOM and the TFG army.
I told 35th Battalion now to fight through and occupy steel factory, the German factory. The German factory was where they were making the IEDs. That's where they were making these improvised explosive devices of all kinds, because there are machines there to drill, make explosives. And I knew it. I knew that's where they're operating for.
Yeah, when we moved in here, as you can see, we found RPG shells. We found mortar bombs. They are also shells, use it to manufacture the IEDs and other big bombs. We are moving ahead, and we think that we could find other such places used by the Al-Shabaab to manufacture such bombs.
I told the Burundians to move from MOD to come to cigarette factory. As we are supporting them, they fought through to cigarette factory. And that's how that line came in. But still, we found ourselves still in the thicket of the urban area.
It's a difficult job because you are, just as you know any other city, you have buildings, some are tall, some are short, and it requires a lot of manpower. And you have to be adaptive if you must make a difference in terms of winning the war. And you end up taking building per building, street by street, with all the challenges, including heavy casualties.
The TFG was marking the end of its tenure, and there was pressure that elections had to take place. But the environment was very hostile.
How do you conduct an election in a country that is 95% under the Shabab and Al-Qaeda leadership?
I'm glad the whole of Africa have condemned these cowards.
It was at this point that President Museveni, in one of the meetings that the United Nations or political office organized in Kampala of the International Contact Group, that he proposed that there should be an extension of the transitional period for 1 year. And in that 1 year, to be able to perform and accomplish some of the key transitional tasks that had not been accomplished in the previous 8 years.
And this was eventually to be approved in Kampala, and that is where it takes the Kampala Accord name.
Shortly after the Kampala Accord, AMISOM soldiers, alongside the TFG army, eventually pushed Al-Shabaab out of many of Mogadishu's districts.
Everybody was doubting whether that could be possible. Even the Somalis could not believe that we could liberate Mogadishu. the international community was also not believing that that was possible.
When Shabab left Mogadishu, it was a turning point on our fight against Shabab, because we knew that from there on it will be easy for us to defeat them in the in other areas.
Is the war over for you? Is Al-Shabaab finished?
No, not yet. We don't want to be excited. The war is still going on, and that's it. It's not yet over.
Although a sense of normality returns to the streets of Mogadishu, these gains have come at a high price for soldiers serving in the AMISOM and TFG forces.
It is very sad to lose even one single soul. It's very sad, because our coming there was to make sure we preserved life.
Remember that the kind of incidents that drove the Americans, the Pakistanis, the Bangladeshis, the British out in previous UN missions, the Ugandans and Burundians suffered many times over, and yet they barely flinched. The fact is that the African Union troops were prepared to stay the course, they were prepared to fight hard.
I remember one day, the Burundians lost 53 people, 53 soldiers. So think about it, 53 young boys being killed in the front lines. You know, they came to Somalia to save from itself, and they lost their lives. Their sacrifice is the ultimate price for peace and security in Somalia.
Quand on est convaincu de ce qu'on va faire, il faut toujours savoir que vous pouvez toujours subir des pertes. On doit savoir que quand on va en guerre, il y a des bas et des hauts, il y a des casses, il y a des sacrifices.
There were dark moments, no doubt about it. You visit the hospital, you find 10 of your people injured, you lose 1 or 2 or even more. Yeah, but then again, you are motivated by the fact that you must make Somalia safe for Somalis first of all, but for the rest of the region and the stability of the continent and the world. And once you have that consolation, then tomorrow is another day, you go for an operation, another week you go for another operation.
Three months following the Kampala Accord, Mogadishu is safe enough to host a meeting of key political players from right across Somalia, together with international partners.
I call you to deliver tangible, meaningful results and results.
For the first time in decades, representatives of major regional administrations and religious leaders come together with a transitional federal government in a spirit of unity for peace. As the political process moves towards its deadline of elections, scheduled for the following year, AMISOM's fight with Al-Shabaab continues in new areas of Somalia.
While Mogadishu was the epicenter of the confusion, but that did not mean that that was the total defeat of the Al-Shabaab. So that called for fanning out of Mogadishu, protect Mogadishu from out of Mogadishu, not by sitting inside Mogadishu. And that's why we had to push to areas like Barad, Denle, and then eventually to Afgoy, and then to Melka, so that we can free those areas. And if we free those areas, then Mogadishu becomes more safer. And if the seat of government becomes safer, then the government can function. And eventually government can also start pushing its tentacles out of the city.
In May 2012, the AMISOM and the TFG army advanced towards new towns, most notably Afgoy, from where Al-Shabaab launches its attacks on Mogadishu. Once again, AMISOM and TFG soldiers' lives are on the line.
When we finally got out of the built-up areas, that was very critical for me, because this reduced on the casualties, and we started to use our firepower to its full capacity. Of course, it created more momentum to me as a commander and the force I commanded to even liberate more areas.
So our aim is to capture Fugoye. We're trying our best to make sure that we accomplish that mission by today. Part of Battle Group 8 goes and cuts off Marka Road, and then the entire Battle Group 9 proceeds to Afugoye, captures the bridge and crosses the Afugoye bridge. That is our objective.
Namna nimeelezea nyinyi nyuma, ni muhimu sana kazi ambayo tunafanya kwa Afrika na ulimwengu dunia. Ya kwanza, hizi terrorists ambao tunapigana nao hapa ni nasumbua nyumbani. Tumepata hizi terrorists ya ADF mingi hapa sana. Kumbe wana train hapa. Wale sasa hivi wanasumbua Nigeria, Boko Haram, wana train nao hapa. Yote wanatoka hapa. So kazi ambayo ninafanya iko muhimu sana. Alafu ingine muhimu ambao jana rais na CLF amesema, mchunge IED. Namna tumeshinda hawa. Wanaenda kukuja na uniform ya TFG kurupuka katikati yetu. Platoon commanders, company commanders, section commanders, kila askari muhakikishe kwamba unachunga mwezi yako. Hii ni sehemu ya undugu kubwa sana hapa Somalia. Hii ni sehemu ya urafiki kubwa sana Somalia. Lakini adui kusongeleza defense, muhakikisha mumuua adui. Tuko pamoja? Yes, sir. Any Al-Shabaab who tries to attack us must die. There is no mediation on that.
AMISOM captures Afgoye and pushes forward into the surrounding region.
Our intention is to get the whole of Lower Shabelle. That is Middle Shabelle and Lower Shabelle. These are areas of Mecca, Afgoye and Balad. And subsequently connect to Baidoa. This is the mission. Of course, we had been getting a lot of Al-Shabaab resistance around all these other areas, but we have taken them on. Right now, as I talk, Al-Shabaab is on the run, and we are pursuing them. Motive is to pursue Al-Shabaab until we get them. The strongest message I can give to them is the Somalians who are with Al-Shabaab, they still have room to come out and join other brothers of theirs for the development of this country. But the foreign terrorists, it's very unfortunate, they do not have any room. And then secondly, they will not deny the people of Somalia freedom or happiness. They must know that the African Union has a mandate to ensure that we pacify Somalia like any other part on the continent. So terrorism is not going to be accepted on this continent.
As AMISOM advances into regions beyond Mogadishu and its outer areas, troop numbers are bolstered by reinforcements from Djibouti and Kenya. The Djiboutian contingent deploys to the region of Hiran and Beledweyne.
If you see Somalia, geographically, it's a large country. And in the region, when we talk about the Hiran region only, there were 800 men in Shabab at that time. So it's one of the stronghold of the Shabab is Hiran actually. But when we stationed it and a strong force there, they were not happy. And And that's why they tried to push us back here. But actually they have quite losses there, and then they couldn't attempt it again to attack that position.
And further south, the Kenyan forces target the Al-Shabaab stronghold of Kismayo. The journey to Somalia's southernmost city is met by heavy resistance, mostly in the form of IEDs.
During our advance from Afmado to Kismayo, we managed to interact with 21 IEDs. There have been improvised explosive devices that have been placed in some buildings in Kismayo. Suspected are the Kismayo police station, the Kismayo hospital, and some government house. That particular IED is capable of destroying a military vehicle carrying around 30 to 40 soldiers. So it's pretty dangerous, because if you lose a vehicle and 40 soldiers in one hit, that would be disastrous.
The Kenyan forces defuse and destroy IEDs as they make their way further south.
We have managed to liberate quite a number of areas, and we started now advancing towards liberation of Kismayo. We had planned the beach landing of troops from the sea as a surprise to Al-Shabaab, because they never expected us to approach Kismayo from the sea.
This is the first amphibious operation to have been taken by any country in Africa. So it was a surprise, and therefore Al-Shabaab melted away into the bush, somewhere into the villages.
The moment the troops landed, Al-Shabaab were confused as to what is happening. And immediately they realized that there are troops who are also coming from the northwestern part. They started running away from the city.
It was a huge success, and to a large extent, it demonstrated the professionalism that the Kenyans have had. The Kenyans really did not even have any casualty suffered during that particular operation. So it is really a professional mission that was undertaken at Kismayo. Working with the Ras Kamboni Brigade and the Somali National Security Forces, together with the people, that has worked very well, because these particular people understand the region very well, understand the communities very well, understand the clan dynamics very well. And I think these are lessons that are very critical, that you must be able to work with the people who are the hosts.
As AMISOM pushes into new areas, it meets a population ravaged by war, drought, and a lack of humanitarian aid. Under Al-Shabaab, humanitarian agencies were barred from areas under their control. AMISOM provides aid by sharing its supplies, a move designed to support, but also win the hearts and minds of the local population.
Whenever you're operating anywhere as UPDF, even at home, even outside, our first priority is to help the population around you. If you get the population around you, you're supposed to give them medical care. You're supposed to share the food you have with them if they don't have food. So it's just part of the army. It's part of our army that we always do that.
Whenever an army brings in humanitarian help, it's always going to be seen or interpreted by some as a bribe. Remember that AMISOM was made up of military forces. They're not humanitarians.
I guess some of the NGOs were having a problem with the presence of the military because of the Al-Shabaab threats. But no, I'm sorry, it's something they had to put up with, okay? You can't go rescuing people and not provide. You can't go rescuing people, and when it comes to food, you're eating alone. The children, the people, they are loitering around, they're hungry.
When we reached here in September, there was a flood. When they see the people dying, they say we cannot stay behind and then see it. So actually they wanted to, and they take risk and perils for their life to save people.
Here in Dobli, we have assisted the civilians in reconstruction of the hospitals. We provide them with medical care. We assist them to transport drugs in those areas where these drugs are required.
When your brother falls down, so you help him to stand up. When he's sick, you give him some medication. And when he needs something, you are there for him to help him every time.
We didn't look at those differences or humanitarian agencies. We didn't see them. If they were there, oh yes, they could have done what they could, but they were not there anyway. So for us, what took us first there was to save lives, and that was the most important.
I remember there was time there was no water, but I was giving water and treatment, and then they were complaining. They were complaining why we are doing that. That the food and the medicine they have is only for AMISOM, not for civilians. Then my argument is, why are we here? Why are we in Somalia? What are we doing here? If we cannot help the population, then we pack our bags and go back to our respective countries. We are here to help the civilians. So the little we have, we should share it with them. When I was operating there, I decided to open health centers. Women could come as far as Ethiopia. You can imagine. For treatment.
She's a pregnant woman. The bomb blast has landed her home. And many people is there from the dying, the family, children, like father lost. And many people, because also she have one child, one kid died.
Our doctors were conducting very sophisticated operations. They conducted very, very difficult operations, which really won the hearts of many Somalians.
I think that is really what helped us to stay up to date in Somalia. Strategic relationship with the population. Having the population on your side. That is it.
By refusing to allow aid agencies to support people who are suffering enormously under the drought, all of those reasons that the Somalis were willing to support Shabab started to fall away.
They began to desert them. The clan leaders, the traditional leaders, stopped their youth from joining them and fighting for them. Besides, a good number of them were doing so not out of belief, but because they needed a job to do, some money to earn to eat, yes, and to eat.
When they started to lose military relevance inside Mogadishu itself, that further reduced their relevance to the point where people could see that this was a fallible organisation. This was an organisation that was on the way out. At that point, people recognised that the only way forward, the only way to defend not just the national interest but also their own clan interests and their personal interests was to support the roadmap and to push al-Shabaab aside.
As security improves across Somalia, headway is made in the political arena.
Somalis are a very determined lot. If they want something to happen, even in an impossible time frame, they will do it.
But Somalia must now embrace a new constitution, select members of parliament, and elect a new speaker and a president. Progress in such a short space of time is unprecedented.
If anything, Somalia had the most democratic elections, to be sincere. The election is very transparent. They vote there and then, the winner is seen, and then they shook hands. And the elected president is being led into State House by the former president. To me, I thought that was something very encouraging.
waxaa maanta halkan ka dhacay taariikhda Soomaaliya inay bogdaaba uga qornaan doonaan waxaan sidoo kale iyo si la mid ah si weyn aad iyo aad u weyn ugu mahadcelinayaa madaxweynihii hore ee Jamhuuriyadda Soomaaliya Sheikh Sharif Sheikh Ahmed.
Je pense que l'élection du président Hassan Sheikh est réellement le marqueur de tout ce processus électoral. Je crois le fait que l'ancien président acceptait vraiment le résultat du choix des parlementaires, parce que c'est à travers un système parlementaire.
As AMISOM continues its operations right across Somalia, and with a new government in place, a cautious sense of optimism prevails.
Even the conditions of living have really changed in Somalia. And I don't know whether I've been in Mogadishu, you can see a number of buildings coming. Even the airport is working even at night. So many flights here and there, which used not to be the case. I saw Somalis now going back home. Somalis are going back home. This is great for Somalia, great for us all, great for Africa, great for the world.
As you see a traffic jam in the city, good buildings mushrooming, a lot of ships anchoring in the ocean, waiting to be offloaded. Really, it shows you that there's a change, and Mogadishu is experiencing the peace.
AMISOM expands its role to encompass capacity building, including the training of Somali civil servants, a move designed to empower government institutions.
We have to focus on the capacity building. All these institutions, the military, the police, the judiciary, all this. It's now about getting the Somalis own their country.
In 2012, Nigeria joins AMISOM by sending some of its police officers to train and refresh the skills of Somali law enforcement agencies.
When you arrive at a crime scene, as a police officer, what is the first thing you think about? What is the first thing?
It's quite amazing that despite the 21 years of non-governance, that some of them are still quite experienced, and the other ones are catching up fastly. And I'm quite sure if this process, this democratic process continues for a long time, within a short period, the Somali police force will be one of the best in Africa.
AMISOM also trains the Somali National Armed Forces in preparation to eventually hand over all security operations in Somalia.
AMISOM will not be here for all these years. So that's why we are training the Somali forces. We're mentoring them, teaching them how to go about with the job, and eventually our end state is to be able to thin out and leave them continue in securing the country.
Every day they are growing, they are taking shape. They have developed structures like that of professional militaries, their deployments, they have a logistic system, things are taking shape.
With an increased security in Somalia, by and large provided by AMISOM, it is now the job of the government to provide for its people.
You need to provide health centers. You need to provide water points. You need to give service deliveries so that you win the hearts and minds of the people. Not until we have done all this and the people develop a sense of belonging to the central government, then we can say we have mission success.
Stand by, behind this one, 2 steps.
I thank AMISOM and the leadership of AMISOM and the way they organized this training. This training is vital for Mogadishu. It was quite impossible, a city of 2.5 million population without fire trucks. We know it's an expensive thing to run a fire department, but we will try very hard to meet all the challenges and all requirements of this project in order to be successful.
AMISOM is working with the new Somali federal government to help rehabilitate disengaged fighters and reintegrate them back into society.
Actually, if you see it weekly, we get an average size, we would get 10 or 15 disengaging fighters. We keep them and then we try to find out their family. And if there is an elders in this city which can take care of these young guys, we give them back. But if there is a center of rehabilitation, it will be good for these guys to keep it and to train them.
Shabab now is a spent force. I don't think they will come back in Somalia. Somalis, whether it's Puntland or Somaliland or the TFG, the state is getting stronger. The state is getting better and better.
The history should remember African Union force as a force that went in when everybody else had given up on Somalia, as a force that turned the equation around, as a force that contributed tremendously towards the stabilization of Somalia, which had become a failed state.
They achieved what some of the most powerful countries in the world had failed to achieve. They've achieved it with staggeringly few resources and little support. They've done it with intelligence and with courage and with a sustained degree of military integrity.
I believe the African Union has every reason to feel proud. This is one political and military exercise that we've taken up almost on our own and won for the good of that country, for the good of all of us.
Up next on UBC, brought to you by
Keep the lights on. Use Airtel Money to pay for all your Yak bills conveniently. Open the My Airtel app to buy Yaka units. Airtel Money. Simple, secure, borderless.